everyone, welcome back to Katie's Favorite Recipes. Today I've got 3 great fall soups that I think you all are going to love. The first one is in the crock pot and it is beef stew. This recipe I've been making for years and my family loves it. The second one is white chicken chili and the last one is regular chili. These are all 3 super simple and they are delicious. So let's go ahead and get started with the beef stew now. Starting off with my beef stew recipe, I do 5 cups of water and then I use beef bouillon cubes. That's how I make my beef broth. So if you're using just beef broth, you can do 5 cups of that, but I threw in 6 cubes because I like my beef broth to be just a little bit stronger. And then I'm going to take a 5-pound bag of potatoes. I'm going to be peeling these and then I'm going to rinse it off and then I'm going to dice it up and throw it into my crock pot. So I do this about a potato at a time. If you want to peel all of your potatoes, then I would say to peel them, and each time you finish peeling one, throw it in some water, because if you don't, it's going to turn really brown if you're using fresh potatoes. Feel free to use frozen or canned potatoes or whatever though, but I'm just using fresh. And then I'm actually using my chopper to help me dice some of these. I'm not going to use my chopper for all of it, because I want a little bit different sizes of my potatoes in here. Not too much of a difference in my potatoes, because if you make them too much of a different size, some of them will turn to mush while some of them are still not finished cooking. So pretty close in size, but I like some of them to be a little bit bigger and smaller. So here I am chopping them up with my knife, and then I'm just going to do this and throw it in the crock pot. And I'm just going to keep doing this until I use about the whole 5-pound bag of potatoes. Typically, I end up using the whole bag or close to it. I just throw them in there and see how the crock pot is filling up as I go, but I use at least almost the entire bag, if not the whole bag. And then next, I have a 2-pound bag of baby carrots, and I'm just going to slice these up into little coins. If you want to use canned carrots, you can do that, but I just don't really like the taste of canned carrots, so I like to use fresh, or you could even get a bag of frozen. But I'm just going to chop these up into little coins, and then I'm going to do not the full 2-pound bag. I'm probably going to do maybe a pound or half a pound. And then I'm just going to throw those in there as I go and stir it around in the crock pot and see, how much carrots I have in there, how much I've chopped up, to see if I have enough or not. You could even just buy this bag of carrots and just dump it in there if you wanted to do that, but we just like ours into little coins. And then next I'm going to take an onion and I'm just going to slice that up. I love sliced onion in this. I feel like it gives it such a good flavor. If you wanted to dice yours up, or if you wanted to, chop it really fine, or just leave this out altogether, feel free to do that. I feel like it just gives this dish a whole lot of flavor. I love the onion in it. I feel like it really flavors the broth. And then next I've got 2 pounds of stew meat. If you would rather get a roast and cut it up, sometimes the roast is a little bit cheaper than the stew meat, but I like to get the 2-pound pack of stew meat because you don't have to chop as much, and I like to take the stew meat chunks and cut them down into little smaller chunks. But I feel like when I get a roast, it just takes me forever to cut it down the way I want it. So that's why I get the stew meat, and this recipe does last us a little while. So anyways, I'm going to sear my stew meat in some butter. If you don't want to mess with this and you just want to throw it in the crock pot, feel free to do that. But I'm going to go ahead and sear mine and season it a little bit with steak seasoning. Feel free to use whatever seasonings you want for this, but I just use the steak seasoning and I love it. I feel like it gives it so much flavor. You all probably see me use this a lot, but I just really like the steak seasoning on a lot of stuff. I feel like it goes well with so many recipes that involve beef. But anyways, once our meat finishes searing, I'm not cooking it all the way through. I'm going to take it and add it to the crock pot. So I'm doing the juice in the pan and everything, and I'm just going to add that in there. I've already had my crock pot on this whole time, letting that beef broth, melt together, the bouillon cubes melt down, and just start the cooking process. And as I chopped everything, I would throw it in the crock pot as I went. So I didn't wait until everything was done chopped all at once. I just done it as I went and just went ahead and started the cooking process. And now I've threw my meat in there, and I'm just going to season this up with a few seasonings that we like. This is all to taste. I'm doing Montreal steak seasoning. And then I'm doing onion powder. I'm just doing all of this to taste. If you don't like any of these seasonings or you think of any that you like, feel free to throw that in there. but I'm also going to go over this with about 1 to 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, just to give it a little bit more flavor. And then once I do that, this is really ready to cook. I like to put mine on high. I stir it up after I've seasoned everything, and I just put the lid on it. I do check it throughout the day a little bit if I'm home, but if I'm not, this is fine to just cook. You can add more or less broth to this if you want, so if you didn't want as much, you could do a little bit less or a little bit more. Sometimes I do thicken my soup with cornstarch slurry or brown gravy mix packets. Sometimes I'll throw a couple of those in there, but I feel like that changes the taste sometimes, and this is just super good on its own, so a lot of times I don't even mess with thickening it, or even instant mashed potato flakes sometimes. But usually now I just leave it alone and leave it as it is, and we just have it like that without thickening the broth, and it's really good. I top mine with cheese, and that's it. Next, I am doing my white chicken chili. So I've got 1.5 to 2 pounds of chicken breast tenderloins here. Feel free to use whatever chicken you want. I'm just going to season this to taste on how we like it and bake this in the oven. So I'm going to do salt, black pepper, and then onion powder and smoked paprika. But I'm going to do all this to taste, and I'm going to actually go over and do this on both sides of the chicken. You can feel free to use any types of seasonings that you like. I think the best seasoning on this is probably the smoked paprika because it goes so well with this white chicken chili. This white chicken chili does have just a little bit of a kick to it. It's not terrible, but it is a little bit spicy, so just keep that in mind. But I'm going to bake my chicken in the oven while I'm preparing the rest of my soup on the stovetop. That way when my chicken's done, I'll just add it in and everything else will be done. But I'm doing 4 cans of Great Northern beans or white beans. This is just the standard size can. So 4 of those, I didn't drain them, and I'm just going to dump all of those in there. And then after I do that, I'm also going to add in 1 cup of water, and then next I'm going to do 2 cups of milk. And then I'm going to do my seasonings. So I'm doing 2 packets of the white chicken chili McCormick mixes, and I'm just going to dump that in there. So I'm going to give that a good stir, and I started using a wooden spoon, and I seen that it wasn't stirring it very well, so I went ahead and got my whisk, and I whisked this up really well until it was smooth and creamy. I'd say as this cooks, the seasoning packets are going to melt down too, so you don't really have to worry about it clumping too much, but I just wanted to whisk it out. And then I'm going to add in a can of Rotel diced tomatoes and green chilies. I did not drain this. I added the liquid to it and everything. And this is turning out to look so good. At this point, after I've finished prepping my soup and I've got it simmering on the stove, my chicken has finished. And I'm actually going to try to dice my chicken up in my chopper. I've never used it for my chicken before, but today I was like, I really want to do this. I don't feel like chopping this chicken. And I didn't really want to shred it, so I was like, I'm going to try this. And I mean, it worked out pretty good. It did stick a little bit, and I had to my chopping blade and to the piece behind the chopping blade that presses it down in there. I had to really work to get all that cleaned out. It comes with little brushes and stuff, and I had to really brush it and scrape it to get it cleaned out. But overall, it chopped it into the perfect size squares, so I was actually really happy about it. But if you want to shred your chicken when it's finished with 2 forks, that would be really easy to do it that way too. But once our chicken is done cooking and we have got it chopped or shredded or whatever you want to do, it's ready to add to the soup, and this is ready to eat unless you want to let the chicken set for a few minutes in the juice to soak up the broth. If not, this is ready to serve. My husband had the idea to put Parmesan cheese in our bowls, and it was so good with Parmesan cheese. Lastly, I'm going to do my chili. So I've got an onion here, and I'm dicing it with my chopper. I'm using the bigger blade on it. You can dice it up finely, you can grate it, you can mince it, you can leave it completely out if you don't like onion in it, but I love onion in my chili. I've got 2 pounds of hamburger meat here, and I'm just going to cook that with my onions at the same time to give it a whole lot more flavor. And I'm also going to use Montreal steak seasoning, and I'm going to season my hamburger up with that. And I'm just going to mash this down into smaller pieces. If you had one of those meat choppers, that would be really well to use right now to help you mash this up, but I'm just using a wooden spoon, and I'm just breaking my meat up. You can do whatever you want on that, but I'm going to let my onions and meat cook together until it's all the way cooked through. If you wanted to substitute your meat for turkey or sausage or anything like that, I'm sure that would be good too. But once this is finished, we are just going to strain this out and we're going to start working on our chili. So I've got 2 cans of this fresh squeezed tomato juice. This is 46 ounces. I'm going to use 1 can of this, and then I'm going to use 1/4 to 1/2 of the other, and I'm going to save the rest for later because when this is all done and it sets, it is going to get really thick. But you don't always need the 2 full cans, so that's why I save the rest for, the next day or later that evening when it's been setting for a long time to see how thick it gets, to see how much I need to add. But anyways, I've got 3 packets of this Chili-O seasoning, and I'm adding that in there. I get the original. Sometimes I'll get the kind with onion, and that's really good too, and you don't really have to add any extra onion. But I just got the original and diced up some onions and threw it in. So anyways, we're going to stir that up, and we are just going to let this start simmering, and we're going to add our chili beans. This is the kind I use. I don't drain the liquid on this, and I use 1 big can of it, so it's a 40-ounce can, and I use that whole can, and then I'll also get a 10.5-ounce can, and I use that as well. And I don't drain any of the liquid off of them. Add in as little or as much beans as you want, and we are going to add our strained beef back into this, and then also we're going to add in 1 cup of water. We are just going to stir this up and let it come to a simmering boil, and then we are going to add some Elbow macaroni noodles. I have a 1-pound box, which is 16 ounces, but I'm not using the whole box. I just dump some in there, I stir it around, I look at how I like the way it looks, like if I've got enough on my spoon. After I stir it, and if I feel like that it needs a little bit more, I pour more in there, which I did this time. As you can see, there was not a whole lot on a spoonful. So I used about, I guess, probably half of this box. And I'm just going to stir that up and check it again. And I like how many I see when I scoop out a spoonful. So we're going to cover that up, let it simmer and cook, and we are going to stir this. You have to make sure you keep it stirred. The noodles will stick and it will burn. So make sure you just keep it stirred up. And then once the noodles are done, that's it. It's ready to serve. These soups are all 3 really good, really easy to make, and I hope that you all enjoy them. Thanks for watching.